What's up, everybody? It's Kevin from Matters on the Map, and today is the next van build episode on installing our electrical area on the driver's side. Here we have a 3-gang 12-volt switch panel, which has 3 switches and a USB as well as a 12-volt cigarette outlet. And each switch will control one accessory. The first one, starting on the left-hand side, is for our water pump. The middle one is for our shower's gray water tank electric ball valve. And the one on the right is our kitchen's gray water tank electric ball valve. On the 110 volt outlet side, we have a timer switch for our water heater, because that sucks up a lot of draw and we don't want to forget that we're leaving this on and wipe out a lot of our battery power. Also, we have a 20 amp outlet here so we can charge, or so we can run a hair dryer, hair straightener, whatever Taylor wants to do with her hair, as well as a blender. So that's why we have this in place. So let's jump in. I'll show you how we built the box here and wired up the electrical for the 110, 120 volt. And we'll also walk through how I wired this 3-gang switch panel and how it looks. Oh, one more thing. I am not a certified electrician whatsoever, so just wanted to disclose that. This is just how I'm wiring it. This is not advice on how to wire your van. This is just how I'm doing it. I am not an electrician. I am strictly just DIY right here. So consult a professional to do your electrical wiring on your van or whatever you are running wires for. Alright, so I'm wiring our switch panel here, which is going to have a 3-gang 12 volt switch panel with two 12 volt power. One's going to be USB and one's going to be like a regular car battery cigarette lighter mount. And then we're going to have 3 switches on the right side on the 12 volt, which is going to be two ball valve switches and one for the water pump. And then over here with our 120 volt, we're going to have a timer switch to control the hot water heater. And then we're also going to have a 20 amp outlet. So here is the timer switch. You could do 30, 20, 10 minutes or 60 minutes. And that's going to be plugged in right here. And then we're also going to have the power for the outlet there. One thing that I'm doing is building a frame around this window here, because I'm not going to have enough space from here to the wall for the length of a 120 volt outlet box as well as the 12 volt 3-gang switch panel. Also, before we get too far into the video, I do want to cover the wires. If you haven't seen my wire diagram video and wiring the van already, check it out. I have marine grade wire, stranded wire, that's ran through the entire vehicle. Most of my 12 volt is ran on 16 gauge wire. Looking back, I kind of wish I did a 14 gauge just to give me a little bit more wiggle room when it comes to running some of the longer lines, like the water pump especially. Just so I can have a little bit more voltage carried through those longer lines there. But I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be using two 12 circuit fuse blocks. So I'm not going to be joining a lot of circuits together. So it should be okay with the 16 gauge wire, but just something to consider looking back. If I were to change anything, I would probably drop down to 14 gauge or maybe 12. I do have some 12 that I can run for other accessories and appliances that I have, but it's a little too late to try and rewire everything. So here's my little makeshift design of what it's going to look like once I put it up. So I had to build a frame around this because the 2-gang switch panel here is pretty deep and there's not enough room for this to just go right against the shiplap here. So I'm building out this little frame, which is actually going to look pretty nice as well. And here's my 12 gang switch panel. This little frame is built out of poplar furring strips, and I just kind of put them together and size it up. I built a little box with extra scrap wood here just so I could raise it up to get these outlet boxes in place and push it down to make sure it looks good. For the box itself, I just have pocket holes drilled in underneath. I just cut this a little shorter, so I need to re-drill that. And then this one as well. And then I will just screw this one together, and then I can put it up in place here and then get to wiring. Alright, so now I'm going to be putting the frame together with the pocket holes. I just got some pocket hole screws here, 1 1/4 inch, and we'll get this in place. I have some wood glue here as well, just to make sure everything's nice and secure. Alright, here we go. Ooh, little dirty, but we can clean that up with some paint. And here is what the frame's going to look like. Here's the 2 gang, 120 volt, and then this is where the 12 volt will go. I think that looks pretty sharp. Alright, so I just took the countersink here and drilled 2 countersink holes in here, and now I am just going to use a 1-inch screw, 1-inch wood screw, to put this in place and frame out the box here. Alright. Alright, so I just got these solder seal connectors from off Amazon, and basically you just use a heat gun to connect and solder 2 wires together, making life a lot easier. So I am now going to put this outlet together and wire everything on. Alright, so this is what the solder connector looks like, and there's a piece of solder in the middle, and you just use a heat gun to melt this down. And what you do is take your wire, you thread it through, and then you intertwine your stranded wire here with the other piece, and then once it's intertwined, then you just move this into the middle and then solder it down. Alright, so I got all my solder connectors done and ready to go. It was pretty difficult because I made this really tight, but basically for this Leviton timer switch, there's just 2 blacks or 2 hots and a ground. And alright, so this is a better shot of it. So now you can see the 1 ground coming out and the 2 black, and then I have just solder connector to the black of the power supply and then the black running to the accessory. Here's my neutral that's just connected together, and then I have my ground cables connected together as well. This is going to be another outlet, a 20 amp outlet for a hair dryer or a blender or something like that. Alright, so now we're going to install the 20 amp outlet, and you put your ground on the green, the neutral or the white above on the same side as the ground, and then your hot, the black, on the opposite side. So that's what we're going to do right now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we got the 3-gang switch panel hooked up, connected to our battery here, and I just wanted to test it out before we review it. All right, so there's the switch. You could tell here, since it's wired up and all connected, then you could see the 3 lights. If I were to disconnect these ones right here and these negatives, then this power supply will only be able to power this front switch here. So these wouldn't light up at all. And again, that's what I plan on doing. So it's pretty simple, not too bad at all. And this is how we're going to do it. All right, so like I said earlier, I'm going to have each switch on its own circuit, and so I'm going to need to cut these wires so they're not relayed over or in series or whatever you call it. All right, so I wanted to stop here real quick because I wanted to explain why I'm about to cut the lines in series. So I want each accessory or load to be on its own circuit. Now I'm certainly not an electrician, so this is just how I'm doing it. But since I'm using 16 gauge wire, I just want every accessory on its own circuit, own fuse. So you can do it how they pre-wired it, or depending on how you want to set up your fuse panel, you could have every load on its own circuit here. So I'm going to cut this line right here from this side. So this will have its own hot, and then same right here for its own negative. And then I'll do the same with these 2 wires, this red and this black, for this switch here. So each switch will be on its own circuit. And then I'll put like a wire nut and then tape that up just so it's secure and not going to mess anything up. Okay, so this one right here, I'll give it a little bit of length so I could put a wire nut on it. Okay, so this is going to go, this is my new hot for this switch right here. And then let me cut my new black. Okay, I'm giving myself a little bit of room so I can put a wire nut on it. Okay. And then same thing for this one. Okay, and here as well. Okay, so now each switch has its own positive and negative, each one. And then I'll just cover those up. So then each switch itself is going to be on its own relay. Other than these 2 sockets, I'm going to leave this in place, which should be fine. Alright, so I have my 4 wire nuts here, which are rated for a minimum gauge of 18 or a maximum gauge of 16. So that should be perfect since I'm only putting 1 on. And then I'll get electrical tape and seal it up. So here's 1. Spin that on there. It's nice and tight. 2, 3, and 4. Alright, and that should be good to go. Alright, so it's getting dark here, but I have my wires cut and ready to get attached. So now I'm going to take this and we'll hook it up. Alright, I might have forgot to mention that you will need one of these terminal connectors or splice connectors. I forget exactly what they're called, but they go right into the one part of the switch. Right there, onto the switch. And connected to the middle switch, which is for our shower electric gray water tank ball valve. So now I'm going to move on to our kitchen ball valve. So now I'm putting this on right here. I have my heat shrink right above it. And once I crimp this down, I'll put the heat shrink over it and use the heat gun to shrink it down, and it'll look real nice. There it is. Here's what it looks like crimped down, Now I'm just putting the heat shrink over it and I'll heat it up. So the actual clips or terminal connectors come with this little blue band indicating the gauge that it's set for. I just rip this off and then do the heat shrink because I just think it looks nicer. Alright, so we got everything wired here. We have the USB and the 12 volt accessory wired up, and it's connected to its own power supply on its own circuit right here. And that's going to supply both of these outlets here. And then we have 3 switches. One is for our water pump, shower gray tank ball valve, kitchen gray tank ball valve. And each one is going to be on its own circuit. I cut the relays, or I cut the wires in series and made them their own, and then connect them to their each power line as well as the line to the load. I just wired up the electric ball valve for the kitchen, which is the right switch, and then I have the shower ball valve, electric ball valve in the middle here, which isn't hooked up yet, so I just brought it right here to test it out. So if I flip this switch, the light goes on and you can hear the motorized ball valve turning. And when I turn it off, real quick, you'll hear the click. It closes. So looking at the back of this, so you see you have 2 reds. Your hot red should be, your power source should be going in the middle one, and then your accessory one should be in the bottom here. So again, power is in the middle, accessory is the bottom. All right, let me just tuck these wires back in here, and it's gonna look something like this. So pretty good, I think that's nice. All right guys, so that wraps up this Vanbuild episode on installing the electrical outlet box on the driver's side wall. Again, we have our 110, 120 outlet and switch that controls our hot water heater, and then it's a 20 amp outlet for a blender, hair dryer, any accessory that requires more amps. And then we got our 3 gang switch panel here, which will control our water pump, and our 2 electric ball valves for our 2 gray water tanks, one for the shower and one for the kitchen. Then we have a USB outlet as well as a 12 volt cigarette outlet here. If you have any questions on how I wired this, drop a comment below. If you would have done it differently, let me know. I don't have this completely permanent yet, so I can make any modifications if I see fit. But I really like how it came out, and I tested every connection on the 12 volt side and everything is working great. On the 120, I will get that tested once I finish my wiring and get my inverter set up. Don't forget to check out our video on wiring the van. I'll provide a link to that in the description below. And I'll also provide links in the description below for all of the products used throughout this video. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you want to see more of our Vanbuild episodes, then subscribe to our channel. I am going to continue posting as much as I can while making and completing this Vanbuild. So again, thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.